Tonight's big story: China's Coast Guard accused Philippine ships of illegally entering waters near Ayungin Shoal and says one of them approached a Chinese ship, resulting in a slight collision.
At the end of their summit in Italy, G7 leaders say that they are seriously concerned about China's dangerous maneuvers against and water cannoning of the Philippine vessels in the disputed waters. And documents recovered from the raid of a POGO hub in Porac, Pampanga implicates former presidential spokesperson Roque, whose travel support for a male pageant winner is now under scrutiny.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Another potential collision out at sea. Early today, the Chinese Coast Guard issued a statement saying a Philippine supply ship, quote unquote, illegally entered the waters near Ayungin, which they call Renai Jiao, at 5:59 a.m. local time.
That statement went on to say that the Philippine vessel ignored multiple warnings and dangerously approached the Chinese ship, resulting in that collision. But the AFP says that it will not dignify the deceptive and misleading claims of the Chinese Coast Guard. Brian Castillo with tonight's big story.
China has blamed the Philippines for the recent collision of vessels near Ayungin Shoal. According to the China Coast Guard, the Philippine resupply vessel, which was delivering food to Filipino soldiers stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre, illegally entered Ayungin Shoal. The CCG said the Philippine vessel ignored multiple warnings from China and allegedly violated international maritime collision avoidance rules. It was also alleged that the Philippine resupply vessel deliberately approached the Chinese vessel, leading to the collision. More than 5 hours after China's statement was released, the armed forces of the Philippines responded. However, they neither confirmed nor directly addressed the allegations of the reported collision. The armed forces stated that they will not disclose operational details regarding the humanitarian rotation and resupply mission at Ayungin Shoal, which is within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. They said they will not dignify nor respond to the deceitful statements of the China Coast Guard. The main issue purportedly is the illegal presence and ongoing intrusion of Chinese ships in the EEZ. They added that the continued aggressive actions by China are reportedly exacerbating tensions in the region. According to maritime security expert Ray Powell, there seems to be a different approach in the military resupply mission today.
The pattern that we've seen from the Philippine side, the only ship that is visible broadcasting AIS, which is what I can track, is the BRP Bagakai. This one looks a little different. Again, we didn't see as in past cases, we didn't see the Philippine Coast Guard escorting, or at least clearly escorting in from directly from the east.
The incident involving the alleged collision followed the start last weekend of China's policy to arrest trespassers in their claimed territory. Those who are caught will be detained for up to 60 days without trial. According to Powell, the Philippines may be pressured into negotiations in case a Filipino is captured.
Because that could easily turn into a hostage diplomacy kind of situation, where you can imagine there would be a lot of pressure, domestic pressure on the government to get your person back. And China could try to use that as an opportunity to put additional pressure on the government to make other concessions in other areas.
President Bongbong Marcos has since condemned this order from China. He also warned recently that it would be considered an act of war should a Filipino die in the midst of tensions in the West Philippine Sea. For News 5, Brian Castillo. We are One News.
Now, just one day before the supposed collision happened, the Philippines, Japan, the United States, and Canada carried out a multilateral maritime cooperative activity, or MCA, at sea. The exercises were conducted within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and involved a series of maritime maneuvers to test and validate the interoperability of the four armed forces' tactics. In a tweet, Japanese ambassador to the Philippines, Endo Kazuya, said it was a testament to Japan's commitment to strengthen regional and international cooperation to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. After the trilateral summit in April, the Philippines, the U.S., and Japan pledged to do more maritime military exercises together.
Also on the weekend, G7 leaders expressed serious concern over China's actions in disputed waters. In its final communique, the part on the South China Sea read, We remain seriously concerned about the situation in the East and South China Seas and reiterate our strong opposition to any unilateral attempt to change the status quo by force or coercion. We continue opposing China's dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia in the South China Sea and its repeated obstruction of countries' high seas freedom of navigation. We express serious concern about the increasing use of dangerous maneuvers and water cannons against Philippine vessels. In this regard, we reaffirm that there is no legal basis for China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea, and we oppose China's militarization, coercive, and intimidation activities in the South China Sea. The G7 countries are the United States, Italy, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, and Canada. This year's summit was held in Apulia, Italy, and the communique was issued the same day that China's new rule took effect, which states it can detain foreigners deemed trespassing in the South China Sea for up to 60 days. Here to talk to us about these thorny issues, we have with us on the show Andy Mok. He's the Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, a Beijing-based think tank. He's also a professor at the Beijing Foreign Studies University. Good evening, Andy. Thanks for being with us tonight.
To be with you.
Right. So I guess you heard our reporting on the matter. And so first thing I want to ask you about is this new rule that kicked in over the weekend on June 15, to be precise, unilaterally imposed by China, which says that the Coast Guard can detain those that they deem trespassing in the South China Sea for up to 60 days without trial. And it seems to a lot of people that that is a major escalation of the situation. What is your take on the matter? Help us see it from the perspective of Beijing.
Sure. Well, I'll certainly do my best. So thanks for having me on. I think that you're certainly right that there are voices around the world, largely, or I would say almost exclusively, in the West, that are depicting this as an escalation. I think from the Chinese side, this shows remarkable transparency and respect for due process, in that China has been very clear its position on this. And it is enforcing, again, its legal rights to its own domain. So, if we use a more domestic example here, if someone trespasses on your land, you're certainly, I think, entitled to take reasonable measures in response. And I think this is certainly China's position. But at the same time, I think the Chinese government also recognizes that the Philippines disputes some of these claims, and that the best way forward is to discuss these in a bilateral fashion. And I think the biggest danger here is not what is being framed as an escalation with this new measure, but it's that the Philippines, I think, is increasingly relying on the U.S., or the U.S. is intervening in this dispute. And this makes me think of an African proverb that seems very apt in describing this dynamic. And it goes something like this. Leaning on a crumbling wall can only bring you down with it. And I'll elaborate just very briefly on what I mean here. I think there's increasing questions about whether the U.S. is, in fact, a legitimate Pacific power. And I think this is certainly going to be more of an issue in the coming months and years. And I think there's also increasing doubts raised about the efficacy of the United States Navy, whether it's the fallout from the Fat Leonard scandal, where a large number of senior Navy officers were implicated in a bribery scandal, including not just money, but sex. We look at the stress that many of the ships in the Seventh Fleet have been under, resulting in accidents like the McCain, the submarine, the Connecticut. And I think there's real doubt growing around the world whether that if the Philippines is looking again to lean on this crumbling wall, that this wall may take it down with it.
Right. Andy, can I just pick on one of the points that you said there? You said that this new rule shows China's respect for due process. I would argue, doesn't this go in precisely against that? Because number one, China imposed this rule unilaterally without consultation from anyone, any external parties. And number two, it allows them to detain, those that they deem trespassing, even civilians, for up to 60 days without trial at that. Where's the due process there?
Sure, and again, I can see that if one disputes that this is China's territory, then of course, if it's a common area, then certainly all the stakeholders should be involved. But again, I think the key point of dispute here is China very clearly sees this as its own territory and as a sovereign state, just as the Philippines could take administrative legal action against anyone, civilian, military, that is trespassing on its territory. So I think this is the issue here, that clearly the Philippines, others around the world, do not see this as China's sovereign territory, and China, of course, very clearly does. And the question is, how do you resolve this difference? And I think, again, the measure that the Philippines is taking is very likely to be highly counterproductive in the long run.
The measure being the measure that the Philippines is undertaking, Andy, being what exactly? Because you also said, and let me just pick what struck me from your initial statement from Regina's first question, that the Philippine disputes are actually recognized by Beijing, and the proof is them issuing this no trespassing rule. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So my understanding is that from China's perspective, Ayungin Shoal, other areas are 100% Chinese territory. So then, of course, it has the right to do what it wants with its own territory, as any country does, the United States, the Philippines, that they can do what they want with their territory. And if others trespass, they can take reasonable measures in response. And again, I think it's very transparent that China's been clear what will happen if people trespass.
Okay, but it could also be argued, I suppose, that the Philippines did unilaterally bring up the case with the Court of Arbitration in The Hague. Given that right now, it's really a bit difficult here in the Philippines. The sentiments, as the poll shows, are very anti-China. Could the Philippines actually, what moves can we do in order to be able to talk to Beijing? A lot of people are saying, a lot of pundits are saying, we should go the diplomatic route. But is there still kind of like a chance for this to happen? Have we crossed the point of no return? Have we really crossed the Rubicon?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I completely agree with you that this is a highly emotional issue, as most territorial disputes between countries are, that this can't help but evoke very powerful emotions and often negative emotions against the other claimants in a dispute. So I think we all need to be as careful as we can here, or the principals involved in resolving this need to be as careful as they can. And I think, China's been very clear about this type of dispute, because we know this area, first of all, this is not just a dispute between China and the Philippines, but many, many other countries have disputes, some involving China, some not. And I think that the best way is negotiation among the parties with a direct stake. And I think that also has been China's position all along, that outside parties should not intervene and should not try to escalate or provoke the situation. And again, from China's view, this is what is happening. And it's certainly my personal hope that this can be resolved in a way that largely addresses the needs of the parties directly involved in this dispute.
Right. So Beijing is clearly against sorry, internationalizing the issue, if that's even a verb, but I mean, the dialogue, the track of dialoguing just directly with the parties involved, that hasn't worked very well, has it either? I mean, I'm talking specifically about the bilateral consultation mechanism, which was established 7 years ago now, May 2017. There have been 8 meetings, as far as I know. The last one in January of this year. Both sides, by that I mean Philippines and China, failed to make headway once again. And also the other track, which is China working with the ASEAN claimants, not just the claimants, but all of ASEAN on a declaration of conduct on the South China Sea that hasn't moved forward either. So, you know, can it be argued that that track isn't working either?
You're absolutely right. I think what we can say, it hasn't been making a lot of progress yet. And I think another feature of these kinds of disputes is that they're contentious and they take a very, very long time, years, sometimes perhaps decades, to resolve. So I think maybe a part of this is also setting expectations. And I think certainly everyone involved would like to see it resolved sooner versus later. But again, these are the types of issues that I think are just not that amenable to a quick solution.
You also have one interesting theory, Andy, from previous interviews. I watched some of your previous interviews, and you've said before that you don't believe that, you believe that none of the conflicts going on around the world right now, whether that be Ukraine against Russia or the Israel-Hamas war, none of that would be possible without the explicit involvement of the United States. I wonder if you could expound a little bit on that.
Sure. Well, I think that if you look again with the Ukrainian conflict, the conflict in Gaza, and the tensions in this part of the world, which is not just with the Philippines, but also with Taiwan as well, that without the explicit support of the U.S., I think that tensions would certainly not be anywhere near as high in the South China Sea. The Ukraine conflict certainly would not have gone on anywhere as long as it has or been anywhere near as destructive. And the death toll in Gaza, I mean, we're almost at 40,000 people killed, mostly women and children, certainly would not be anywhere near as high either. So I think that what I'm stating here is really a fact, not an opinion.
And you're worried that the Philippines...
And of course, some people would not like this.
Right.
You know, that there's two sides to every conflict, and the side that is being supported by the U.S. obviously benefits, at least in the short term.
Right. And you're worried that the Philippines may become the Pacific equivalent of Ukraine. Is that correct?
Well, I think that this is the wish of at least a few American policy makers, that, again, that China must be contained, it must be weakened, and the American strategy, again, you know, we need to understand that the U.S. is a continental country with enormous natural resources, a wealth of natural resources, but relatively few people, even though 330 million people is a lot of people. That it's always better to have someone else fight for you, right? There's a Chinese saying, borrowing a knife to kill somebody. And, you know, this has certainly been the strategy in Ukraine. And of course, very influential members of the American political establishment have publicly said that it's much better to have Ukrainians kill Russians than Americans kill Russians, because then the Americans would also suffer casualties. So I think it's not hard to see the parallel here with the Philippines.
Well, Andy, at this point in time, what should we do? I think we spoke to one analyst who said that we should wait, in terms of at least the diplomacy route, that we should wait for China to make the first move, because we kind of have tried this and that already and nothing seems to be working. And as you said, patience must be shown and must be exhibited, and we must sit tight. Having said that, should we wait for China to kind of like extend an olive branch, or if not an olive branch, at least make the first move?
I think that's very hard to say. And again, I think if we look at politics in general, I'm a little bit more familiar with American politics than Filipino politics. But to get anything done often takes a long time. And those involved in the American political process often talk about the importance of the stars being aligned. So it not only requires dedicated people of goodwill working together to solve a problem, but sometimes it takes a change in external circumstances for a lasting agreement to be reached. So I'm personally not so sure that it requires one side to make an overture. But I do think that certainly, what is the alternative? So the alternative is greater escalation, more accidents like we just heard about. And of course, this can spiral and lead to an outright military conflict involving several countries. It could even escalate into a much wider conflict. And I think this is what worries and alarms many people around the world. And I think we all would agree that this is something best avoided.
I mean, you're right. It is something that worries people around the world, and there is precedent for China's militarization. It used military force to occupy the Paracel Islands in 1974, also forcibly seized control of the Johnson South Reef in the Spratlys from Vietnam in 1988. There is a lot of precedent there to draw from. What is the best case scenario here for the Philippines, given that we have been running, a year and a half of, stories about run-ins out in the disputed water, particularly Second Thomas Shoal?
Yeah, I think that's very difficult for people that are not directly involved in these discussions to say. But I think certainly, as you mentioned earlier, this is a very emotional issue. There are real interests at stake here. This part of the world has enormous natural resources. It's a vital lane of shipping for global shipping. So certainly these are important issues. They're high-stake issues. And a peaceful resolution that can, as much as possible, accommodate everyone's interest is the best outcome. Now, how close we can get to that, I think, of course, will depend a lot on the people actually involved negotiating this topic and on external events as well.
Right.
Maybe the stars will align, maybe they won't. I think we really don't know. But I think, again, it's in everyone's interest to avoid escalation. And I think from the Philippines' perspective, to avoid leaning on this crumbling wall, because in the long term, this might not serve Filipino interest very well.
Give us some insights. This assertive transparency campaign that the Philippines has pinned its hopes on. By that I mean, shining a very harsh spotlight on what's going out in the disputed waters, bringing journalists out on missions frequently, taking photos, videos, and all of that. Give us a better sense of how Beijing is seeing all of that.
Yeah, I think, it's mixed. I think certainly there's a view that this is part of an escalation strategy, as we've seen with the Ukrainian conflict as well, that in Ukraine, there's three battles or three wars being fought. So one is the military one on the actual physical battlefield. There is a financial war being fought as well, with Russian assets being seized, the global payment system being weaponized. And there's also a PR/propaganda war as well. And I think, what we're seeing here with a lot of these recent activities that, you called transparency initiatives, really can perhaps also be viewed as part of the PR or the propaganda war here as well. Because we also have to, I think it's interesting to point out too, that in the early days of the Ukrainian conflict, Western media was almost unanimous in saying that the world has united against Russia. But it didn't note that India was not on board. Most of the Middle East, the OPEC countries, were not on board either. China, of course, was not on board. So I think we have to be careful here that how much of this really is nefarious bad acts by China, and how much of this is actually manufactured. And I think this is very pertinent for the Philippines as well. Recently, it was exposed that the U.S. military was engaging in disinformation about Chinese vaccines with COVID. And I think it's no surprise, and it's fairly well known that the U.S., of course, engages in these kinds of activities. So I think it's important to approach this with at least a little bit of skepticism.
Right, Andy, I wanted to get your thoughts. I'm sure, of course, you heard over the weekend that the G7, at the end of their summit, they did issue a little statement condemning China. That might not be very little, but in terms of a flashpoint in this area, in this part of the world, is what's hotter, Taiwan or the South China Sea?
Yeah, I think that is hard to say, but certainly I think both rank very high in terms of dangers and risks that I think most people that follow geopolitical issues see as dangers. And again, I think why there's so much attention being paid to this. So I would say that they both have the potential to be disastrous for those directly involved, the Philippines in this instance, and Taiwan in the other instance. And they also have the potential to draw in other countries, to cause a global economic crisis, perhaps even a financial crisis as well. So I think it certainly then behooves all the parties that can influence the outcome to bear these dangers in mind.
Right, Andy, and just very quickly, running out of time, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Give us the general sentiment of President Bongbong Marcos's speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore a few weeks ago, what people are saying there underground in Beijing about it.
Well, again, I think that the view is, and I think there's certainly some facts to back this up, that this is certainly encouraged, that it's the flames are being fanned by the United States. And of course, this is not to say that the Philippines does not have agency here. It certainly does. I think the people's sentiments are certainly important. Again, this is also dangerous as well, that if there's rising anger or feeling, this can be very negative. So I think the view from Beijing is that certainly that a more amicable approach would probably be more constructive. But the door is always open. And I think this is one of the hallmarks of Chinese diplomacy, is this pragmatism that is completely non-ideological, that as long as parties approach this on the basis of mutual respect and respect for sovereignty, that discussions and win-win outcomes are the best way to address these kinds of problems, even if they can take quite a long time.
Right. We've run out of time, but we'll debate that pragmatic approach next time. For now, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Andy Mock, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Thanks for being with us.
Lots to digest. Let's pause for a quick break for now. But up next, a bombshell Reuters report showed that the U.S. military ran a secret smear campaign, as Andy was saying, to discredit the Sinovac vaccine in the Philippines. The details on that when we return. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
The U.S. military launched a secret disinformation campaign against China's Sinovac right here in the Philippines. That is the shocking revelation from a special investigative piece the Reuters news agency released over the weekend. Arian Kalumbiran with the details.
In a bombshell investigative report published June 14, Reuters reported that at the height of the pandemic, the U.S. military ran a secret smear campaign against China's COVID-19 vaccine Sinovac here in the Philippines. Citing former and current U.S. military officials, Reuters said the secret campaign aimed to, quote, counter what it perceived as China's growing influence in the Philippines, a nation hit especially hard by the deadly virus. The report added that this campaign aimed to sow doubt about the safety and efficacy of vaccines and other life-saving aid that was being supplied by China. The U.S. Pentagon supposedly used fake accounts on social media to impersonate Filipinos complaining about the quality of face masks and test kits from China, as well as the Sinovac vaccine, the first COVID-19 jab to be made available in the country. Reuters described this as China's propaganda efforts that morphed into an anti-vax campaign. Reuters identified at least 300 accounts on X, formerly Twitter, that matched the descriptions shared by former U.S. military officials familiar with the propaganda campaign. The report said almost all of these fake accounts were created in the summer of 2020 and that they centered on the slogan, China ang virus or China is the virus. While the U.S. military started by targeting Filipinos, the propaganda campaign supposedly expanded beyond Southeast Asia before it was terminated in mid-2021. Reuters estimates that the U.S. military's fake accounts racked up tens of thousands of followers during the program, which took place during the last 2 years of the Duterte administration. The disinformation campaign was said to have started under former President Donald Trump and continued months into the Biden presidency. At a news conference, China's foreign ministry spokesperson Lin Jiang called the U.S. out.
We have noted the relevant reports. Facts have repeatedly proven that the U.S. has been manipulating social media to spread false information, influencing public opinion to smear the image of other countries. This is a consistent practice by the U.S., and China is firmly opposed to it.
The DOH says the Reuters report needs to be investigated. Assistant Secretary Albert Domingo said the report should also be heard by the appropriate authorities of involved countries. Domingo noted, though, that there are published peer-reviewed studies like one from BMC Public Health which found that vaccination decisions among Filipinos are determined by their age, educational attainment, health insurance, employer requirement, high awareness of the disease, and a high level of vaccine confidence. Meanwhile, former vaccine expert panel head Dr. Nina Gloriani says she doesn't believe that there was ever a smear campaign against Sinovac.
Siguro ayokong maniwala o isipin that there could be such people doing a smear campaign like that. Kasi it was a pandemic time. Lahat halos nagwo-worry, sino mamamatay, sino gagaling. And we were running after each manufacturer ng vaccine kung sino makakabigay sa atin. And at that time, ang China ang naunang nagbigay ng vaccine sa atin. It took a long time for the Western vaccines to come.
DOH data show that over 181 million COVID-19 vaccines were administered in the Philippines by end 2023, almost 49 million of which were Sinovac shots. Arian Kalumbiran, we are One News.
Moving on to POGOs, the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission, or PAOC, may file as early as next week serious non-bailable criminal charges against suspended Bamban-Tarlac Mayor Alice Guo and others in connection with illegal offshore gaming operations in her town. PAOC spokesperson Winston John Casio said an interagency council would meet to finalize the cases to be filed against Mayor Guo and the incorporators and owners of Tsunyen Technology Incorporated. And as for the POGO raid in Porac, Pampanga on June 5, Casio said they expect to finish inventory this weekend.
Tomorrow may initial meeting po kami doon sa mga documents kung ready na yung aming mga documents for filing. Then ang aming deadliest line of filing is on Friday. We have to make sure na maayos lahat yung aming mga papel na para hindi kami ma-technical or what. Then sa Friday, ipa-file na po namin sa DOJ yung kaso laban dito kay Mayor Alice Guo et al.
on top of that, documents retrieved from the raided hub in Porac, Pampanga gives this story a new twist. An affidavit of support from former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque showed that he had funded a travel companion when he visited 3 European countries in 2023 for speaking engagements. The companion turned out to be Mr. Supranational Philippines 2016 winner, Alberto Rodolfo de la Serna. In the affidavit, Roque said, Alberto Rodolfo de la Serna will accompany me to these countries as an invited resource person to speak on an event on the peace process in Ukraine, which will be in Kiev, Ukraine, to be held from 13 to 16 October 2023. It goes on to say that I need a travel companion since I am a diabetic with coronary stent and suffering from acute spinal stenosis. I am financially capable and willing to cover all expenses related to De La Serna's travel, including but not limited to transportation, accommodation, meals, medical expenses, and any other necessary costs. PAOK has already said that the document itself is not suspicious or criminal in nature. But Harry Roque continues to trend on social media, especially after users found out that De La Serna, his travel companion, had also become Roque's executive assistant. Roque also served as lawyer for Whirlwind Corporation, which is a company that leased the property to Lucky South 99, the raided POGO hub. Moving on now to sports. Now this is really exciting, Reg. For the first time in franchise history, the Meralco Bolts are now the PBA champions, beating the San Miguel Beermen to win the Philippine Cup title. Meralco star Chris Newsome did not think twice to bury the jumper over the defense of Don Troliano, giving Meralco a 2-point lead with 1 second left in the game. The Bolts had to hold their breath, though, as Junmar Fajardo shot the desperate three-pointer that would have given the Beermen victory, but the reigning MVP missed the shot. Newsome tallied 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block en route to bagging the final's most valuable player plum. Providing the lift were Alain Maliksi and Bong Quinto, who chipped in 14 and 11 markers to step up for their 4 troubled frontcourt.
And fresh off that very first win, here with us tonight is head coach of the Meralco Bolts, Coach Luigi Trillo. Good evening, Coach Luigi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations, Coach Luigi. How are you feeling? This is so...
Very first title of the franchise. That's saying something. How are you feeling, as Sean said?
Yeah, a bit overwhelmed. Surreal last night. We finished the game about 10, but I went to sleep at 8 a.m. We went to Hard Rock in Makati with the whole team, with our families. Enjoyed their 8, had a bit of a band there, and then, couldn't sleep. But this is a long time coming. I've joined Meralco. This is my 11th year. The last 10 years have been great, but, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. 4 final appearances, 14 semifinals, and, never there. And then this was a special year. I mean, we started out 3-5, 2 practices before our first game. We had to give them days off because we've had a busy year joining the ESL, PBA, the DOA Cup. And it just all fell into place. But, proud of the whole organization. Happy for guys like, Chris Newsome, Cliff Hodge, Bong Quinto, Anjo Karam. These are guys who have finally won one, and happy for them.
What finally made it click, Coach Luigi? I mean, I'm going to say this is no insult, but everyone knows Meralco's kind of viewed as the underdog. I mean, I am aware that you guys have been doing better and better, but when did you feel that you really had it in the bag? Was it just in the final minutes of the ball game, of the last game?
Yeah, no, we never felt like that at all. But what we wanted to do was be at our best. You have to give these guys confidence too and make them believe. I think those tough times through the course of this season made us stronger. I think that we knew in our hearts this whole year that we probably had the hardest practices and we were in shape. Mm-hmm. And then I think the culminations when we were 3-5, we were 11th out of 12 teams. Mm-hmm. we won, we beat some of the tougher teams. We went on a 4-game winning streak, and then obviously we beat the NLEX. This Ginebra clash in the semis really brought out the best from the guys and the coaching staff. But heroes all around. We knew we needed to be more disciplined. We needed to have poise. We had needed to play both ends of the court, defensively and offensively. And then, San Miguel, we respect them. We know they're a quality team, a quality franchise, a lot of players, a lot of experience. But we knew we had enough. We knew we had enough, and we wanted to be out there doing what needed to be done. And we really locked in and zoned in. And, just there on your screens, just our fans, that was for them rin, sa kanila rin yan po. Very happy through thick and thin. And finally, we got one. And it was well earned, I think.
It was indeed, Coach Luigi. But was there something that you did specifically? Of course, you're the captain of the ship. You are the coach. Everyone's going to look up to you and look to you for strategy. Did you make some changes, or has it just been like, sa pakikisama and getting to know each other through time?
Well, a big help for us is Coach Nenad Vucevic. He is our active consultant. And, our bosses gave us the opportunity to work together. We work closely together. He brings a different background. He's been all over the world. I think it's great that we bring in international coaches to improve everything here. And I think we had everybody locked in. Chris Newsom, such a great leader. Hodge, Maliksi. These are guys that are character-based, and we knew that we were close, right? But certain things we needed to do against San Miguel. Obviously, they have Junmar Fajardo, they have Vic Manuel, they have Mo Tatua, so we had needed to do some things tactically on the post. We also know that our very big pick-and-roll team, like Terrence Romeo, but there on your screens, the fast breaks where we push the ball, we knew that it was a pace kind of game. It's their pace versus ours. They like to slow the game down. We like to push it. As the series went on, we needed to clean more stuff, and we hang on. And, we had big games there on your screens. Junmar hitting that 3 that almost brought it to overtime. But you give credit to our guys. Our guys hang tough. They deserve all the compliments. They hit the big shots when needed. They got the big stops when needed. Sir Ricky Vargas there, Boss Al Pandido also there. This is a testament that, sometimes the underdog wins, and I like the tag. We like that, and nothing was given in this series. Everything was earned, and extremely proud of everyone around.
We also love a good underdog story. When you say that you knew you had enough and you knew what you needed to do to win the game, what weakness of San Miguel's did you latch onto before the game that you tried to exploit without giving too much away?
Yeah, well, we know that they're the number one offensive team. So they score in bunches, 110 a game. They've won all the games that scored over 100. So we needed to lock in defensively, right? And we've beaten them 5 times this year. So, there's only been one team that has beaten them in the eliminations. Everybody's lost to them. So we've kind of held on to that, right? But you're right. There's certain things they do well, and there's certain things of points of attack. And there's certain things we needed to do. So there are probably some guys there who may not be known offensively, that we needed to let them shoot the ball. We needed also to attack some guys who weren't good defensively, right? And it comes without saying that at the end of the day, that's a 7 grueling game matchup, right? We felt we were in shape. We liked the pace. We pushed it. We gave confidence to the guys. We were right behind them through thick and thin. They don't do well. Their struggles, we're right behind them. We believe in them. They've worked hard. We have enough vets in the room. Every time we saw them making a run, we made sure that we closed it, or we watched video and talked about poise, and we really held them accountable. And I think through the course, we got clear at what we wanted to do.
Right. What I see on social media, Coach Luigi, is that the Meralco Bolts as a team, they work really, really hard, putting attention on, fitness, strength and conditioning, perhaps also diet, lifestyle, I'm sure. Is that kind of like a Kumbaga, yan ba yung kultura ng Meralco Bolts? Is that something that you all kind of tacitly agree on? Is that something you impose or management imposes, or even our foreign consultant, or your foreign consultant rather, imposes? Like, how is Meralco's preparation and all the training, how is it different compared to other teams in the PBA?
Well, we take everything to heart, like we just said. There's things that we try to focus on. When we do draft players, we look for certain things. Our boss, MVP, we're very grateful to have him. He's very supportive. He flew back from Hong Kong. He watched the first two games and they were saying he was malas. And then we won game 5. Game 6, he decides to come back and give a speech. For 5 minutes, he entered the dugout. And then he had the reunion to go to. He said if we're leading, he'll come back, and he did come back in the 4th. So you're right there. We have values. It's different. We make sure we sign every autograph. We make sure we do extra work. When we were in the pandemic, we did certain things in cleaning the ocean. We clean locker rooms when we're in the ESL. We make sure we don't leave anything. My younger brother, Paolo, who's the manager, he does the video and carried the bags when we were in the pandemic. So it shows when you lead in that type of, from the front that way, it follows, right? And we have a great staff. Our conditioning staff is great. Leaders on the court are great. And, we wouldn't be able to do it just by one guy. So I think all these things rub off on different people. We're very family oriented, and we're grateful. So,
Coach, so Coach, obviously management support is critical, but talk us through the role that the fans played in your Cinderella story, especially the ones who stood by you.
When I first came here, we didn't have too many fans, but they're loyal. And we built on that. And, the nicest thing is even when we had some tough times, and mind you, we've had a lot of heartbreaks and tough times, but, that's where you build camaraderie. Even in our group inside, that group inside the locker room, when things don't go and we can, break up, we decide to come together. And we stick together, and I think that's the bond that we do. Players have player meetings right after the coaching meetings. We're a good group to have, and just grateful that we're all here together.
Last question, Coach Luigi. I know adrenaline has kept you up. Probably not just you, but the entire team and the entire staff. You until 8 a.m. But what's next for the Bolts? Tuloy-tuloy practice? What is everyone going to be doing? Yeah.
We'll take a break now. It's been a busy year. The last 9 conferences, it's so hard to stay in the semis. We've had, out of 9 conferences, I think we've made 6 semifinals. We won a championship. We're looking forward to the draft. We might be drafting 11th. That's July 13th. But we're going to take a break, kind of, get away from basketball a bit, stay with our families or friends or loved ones. But we have a heavy season. We're representing again the ESL. We ended number 1 now. And this is the All-Filipino, which to me is the most prestigious because you can say you're the best team in the country, and we are. So, we're excited to go back to the ESL. That's the best of Asia. We'll be there. July 14, I think, is the draft, the PBA draft. August 7 is the first conference. There are 3 conferences this year. There's going to be a lot of Bolts basketball again. So, grateful, thankful, honored. Been a magical moment. Yesterday, we're going to hold on to this for a while and then back to business again in the draft.
All right. Fantastic. We'll let you get back to partying with the young ones. Congratulations once again. Thanks for joining us tonight, Meralco Bolts coach Luigi Trillo.
Right before we end the show on this Monday evening, here is our big picture for tonight. We see here our Muslim brothers and sisters, despite the rain, celebrating al-Adha, or the Feast of the Sacrifice. Through Proclamation number 579, Malacanang has declared June 17 a regular holiday to observe that celebration. al-Adha usually falls on the 10th day of the 12th month of the Islamic lunar calendar and it celebrates the devotion of the Prophet Ibrahim to Allah, where he is ready to sacrifice his son to prove his faith. To our Muslim community, our Muslim brothers and sisters, Eid Mubarak, and may the blessings of Allah be with you always. And maybe on us as well.
Be on us as
well.
On us all.
On us all.
Before we end the show, we do have a bit of breaking news earlier. We started the show by saying that the AFP had issued a almost nondescript statement on China Coast Guard saying that there was a collision at sea. Now there's a new statement wherein they said, in part, the mission was disrupted by the illegal and aggressive actions of China maritime forces. The People's Liberation Army, China Coast Guard, and Chinese maritime militia vessels engaged in dangerous maneuvers, including ramming and towing. Despite the illegal, aggressive, and reckless actions by the Chinese maritime forces, our personnel showed restraint and professionalism, refrained from escalating the tension, and carried on with their mission. Again, that's from the Armed Forces of the Philippines statement just in. This would be the second statement of the day from them. Initially, they had said that they were investigating the matter. I guess behind the scenes, they took their time to try to, lay out the facts and understand what went down at the second Thomas Shoal or Ayungin Shoal.
Right. But just to be clear from what you read out from the AFP's second statement today, they're calling it a minor disruption. That's
they said it was the mission was disrupted by the illegal and aggressive actions of Chinese maritime forces. So this is still a pretty strongly worded statement, akin to what they have released previously every time there has been a run-in at sea. They said that China was the one who engaged in dangerous maneuvers. Remember China's statement at the top of the show. We said that the Chinese Coast Guard was first to issue a statement, and their statement also used the words dangerous maneuvers. They accused the Philippines of
conducting dangerous maneuvers
and now this
charging their boat.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And then resulting in a slight collision is what the Chinese Coast Guard said. And this statement from the AP uses almost identical words, but this time pointing the finger at the other side, at China, saying that they're the ones who engage in dangerous maneuvers, including ramming and towing.
It ties in with what Andy Mock was saying earlier in the show that, China has a certain view based on what they think is, theirs, and so does the Philippines.
Similarly,
exactly. Yeah.
The Philippines is coming at it from a point of view that this is our exclusive economic zone, and China's approaching it from that perspective as well. And this is why the two sides are unable to meet.
We're hoping for a resolution, but in the meantime, congratulations to the Meralco Bolts. We were almost going to end the show on a positive note.
Yeah, but that is a good story to end on. Meralco Bolts, fantastic. Finally,
after 14 years.
First franchise win. And that's a great story, as Coach Luigi was saying. They've always known they were a bit of an underdog, but they still threw everything they have into it.
Remember the Mighty Ducks? That's like one of my favorite underdog movies.
It's a great underdog story. It's coming from behind. You give it your all as well. San Miguel, obviously, a formidable opponent. But, you still give everything you have to it. And look what happened. They come out on the other side champions.
All right. On that good note, we are going to end the big story on this Monday night. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.